The shelf was supposed to help. You measured the wall. You chose the brackets. You found a style that felt right for the space. And for a few days, maybe even a week, the room felt more organized, more intentional, like you had finally figured out the square footage problem. Then the shelf filled up, because shelves always fill up. And now, standing at the entrance of a room that was already small to begin with, you notice it before you can stop yourself. The wall feels closer. The ceiling feels lower. The room that used to breathe now holds its breath. You added storage to gain space, and somehow the room got smaller. What if the shelf was never the problem? What if the way shelves are usually filled is? There is a version of a small home that doesn't feel small, not because it has clever tricks or clever furniture, but because what lives on the walls, on the surfaces, on the shelves, has been chosen with a kind of quiet intention. You walk in and the room exhales. Your eyes rest instead of traveling. The space feels complete rather than crowded. That feeling is available even in a studio apartment, even in a single room with one window. What changes isn't the square footage. It's the visual weight of everything inside it. Stay until the end of this video. The last idea here is the one that tends to reframe everything else, and it asks almost nothing of the space you live in. There is a Japanese word that belongs here: siri. It is one of the 5 principles of workplace organization, but its meaning travels well. Siri means to distinguish what is necessary from what is not to throw away, not to minimize for its own sake. Simply to see clearly for the first time what truly needs to be there. In a small home, Siri is not a philosophy, it is a survival skill. Because in a small space, every object has weight. Every object on a shelf either opens the room or closes it. Begin with what visual weight actually means. Imagine 2 shelves side by side. One holds 20 objects. Books stacked tight, small frames, a basket, a candle, a plant, another candle, a ceramic pot, 3 more books. The other holds 3 things: 1 ceramic bowl, 1 plant, 1 book lying flat. Even without seeing them, you already know which room feels larger. The difference isn't the size of the shelf, it's the density of what it holds. Visual weight is the amount of information the eye has to process when it lands on a surface. A full shelf asks the eye to work. A sparse shelf lets the eye rest. And in a small room, a resting eye perceives more space than it actually has. This is the counterintuitive truth at the center of this video. A shelf with breathing room creates the illusion of a larger room. A shelf packed to its edges creates the feeling of a wall. Now consider what fills most shelves in most small homes. Not things that were chosen, things that arrived. The decorative plate from a trip that felt wrong to put away. The stack of books waiting to be read someday. The small objects that were gifts or impulse buys, or pieces of a collection that grew past the space it was given. Most shelf clutter isn't the result of carelessness. It's the result of not having a moment to decide. So objects stay, and the shelf becomes a holding zone instead of a considered space. Siri asks a different question. Not, does this have a place? But, does this need to be here at all? The shelf is not storage. The shelf is display, and display is a form of choice. If you find that question difficult, if objects feel impossible to let go of or even to move, there is something in the first pinned comment worth looking at. It is called the Peaceful Home Kit, and one of the things inside it was built specifically for this: a gentle system for releasing objects without guilt. Rooted in the Japanese Danshari philosophy, for people who don't want to throw things away, they just want to feel lighter. The next principle is one the eye already knows, even if the mind hasn't named it. Call it ma. Another Japanese word. Ma means the space between things, the pause, the interval. In music, ma is the silence that gives notes their shape. In a room, ma is the empty space on a shelf that lets your eyes settle instead of scatter. Most people treat empty shelf space as a problem to solve, space waiting to be filled, a surface not yet used. But in a small home, that gap between objects is not emptiness. It is breath. It is what makes the objects beside it feel intentional instead of accidental. A practical invitation. Look at the shelf in the room where you spend the most time. Count the objects on it. Then imagine keeping only 3. Not forever, just as an experiment, just in your mind. Notice what the room does in your imagination. Notice what the shelf does. That imagined version of the shelf, with its breathing room and its 3 objects chosen with care, that shelf opens the room. The one with 20 things closes it. There is a third idea that goes deeper than arrangement. Shelves are often filled not because of what the home needs, but because of what was bought. And in a small home, buying too much isn't just a financial habit. It is a spatial one. Every object purchased needs a home. And when space is limited, it ends up on a surface, inside a drawer, or, most visibly, on a shelf. The cycle looks like this. The room feels cluttered, so a new organizer is bought to solve it. The organizer arrives and takes up space on the shelf. The shelf looks fuller than before. The room feels smaller. Another solution is considered. The answer to this cycle is rarely another purchase. It is a pause before the purchase. Asking what is already owned. Noticing what is never used. A more intentional relationship with consumption doesn't just affect finances. In a small home, it directly affects how large the room feels to live in. The last idea is perhaps the simplest. A shelf is a decision, not just once when it is first arranged. Every week, every month. Because objects arrive without invitation. A shelf that felt considered in January feels crowded by March. Not because something was done wrong, because this is how spaces work when they aren't revisited. The small homes that feel consistently open and peaceful are not the result of a single organizing session. They are the result of a quiet habit. Looking at a shelf every few weeks and asking, with honesty, what belongs and what has simply settled there. Removing one thing, moving another, leaving the space to breathe again. This is not a big task. It takes perhaps 5 minutes, but it changes what the room feels like every day after. What this video was really about wasn't shelves. It was about what it feels like to live in a small space and still feel free in it. A small home doesn't have to press in on you. It doesn't have to make you feel like the walls are moving. But it does require a different relationship with objects than a large home does. Less tolerance for things that don't belong. More attention to the space between things. A gentle willingness to let things go, not because minimalism is a value, but because lightness is. The size of your home doesn't determine how your home feels. The intention inside it does. If that idea resonates, there is something that was built to make it practical rather than just philosophical. It is called the Peaceful Home Kit. Inside, you will find a daily home planning assistant that adapts to your real life each day, asking about your time, your energy, your priorities, so that you are never again staring at your home not knowing where to begin. There is also the Letting Go Planner, built on Denshari, which helps release objects gently without the guilt that usually makes decluttering feel impossible. The Kakebo Financial Planner helps bring intention to buying, so fewer things arrive that were never really needed. The Home Maintenance Tracker keeps small tasks small so they never become overwhelming. And the 21-Day Peaceful Home Challenge builds the kind of habits that last, slowly, one small action at a time. What you stop feeling, the weight of a room that presses in on you, the paralysis of not knowing where to start. What you gain, a home that feels larger than its square footage, and a kind of quiet you actually feel when you walk through the door. It is in the first pinned comment. Go there now and take a look. A peaceful home is not a big home. It is a considered one.